comes Cece now to take her on at the top of the stretch. Serengeti Empress in front. Cece still a length behind as they arrive at the 8th pole. And Bells the One is bearing down on the far outside. Serengeti Empress still there. Bells the One and Cece. Here comes Bells the One on the outside. Serengeti Empress digs in. These two down to the line. Head bobbing finish. Oh, it's close.
Back to Racing Rundown. Today we're going to be getting into more Breeders' Cup action, another Breeders' Cup preview here on Racing Rundown. The first race for Saturday is what we have lined up for today. The Breeders' Cup Filly and Mare Sprint, 7 furlongs over the Keeneland Racecourse. 9 horses are entered, and as usual, we're going to go through all of them. We'll start off with the number 1 horse, Speech, who is 6-1 on the morning line, and I think she does deserve at least a little bit of a look in here. But ultimately, there's one real reason why I don't think Speech is a win contender in this race. I don't think it has anything to do with the pace of this race, which we will get into when we get to some of the other speed horses in this race. I really think, honestly, the determining factor for why I wouldn't pick Speech in this particular race is given the fact that in all of her graded stakes efforts, and even going to the allowance race at Oaklawn Park, that she was put up in via disqualification, but I think most people know that Gamine was the best horse on that day, and she was beaten, even though Gamine was kind of tiring in that mile and a 16th allowance. Gamine still was the better horse on the day. Looking at her other races, she split her 2 runs with Venetian Harbor. She lost to Santa Isabel at Santa Anita back in March, but she did win the Ashland against Venetian Harbor. But against Swiss Skydiver, she was beaten. Against Bast earlier this year for Bob Baffert, even though she didn't stick around in the Kentucky Oaks Trail, Bast at one point was the top 2-year-old and 3-year-old filly in the United States. And then in the Kentucky Oaks, she was beaten by both Swiss Skydiver and Gamine, and also She Dares the Devil. So for me, honestly, Speech, even though I think she does, like I said, she does deserve a little bit of a look. 6-1 is not bad, and I will probably think she'll go up a little bit, but stick around that range. Ultimately, she just doesn't beat the top-level horses in here. The only horse that is a multiple graded stakes winner she has finished in front of is Venetian Harbor. She's never run up against the likes of Serengeti Empress or even some of the other talented fillies in here. So for me, Speech was a pass. Moving on to number 2, Gamine, one of the favorites for this race. She is the morning line favorite. I do have a little bit of suspicions that maybe Serengeti Empress will take the favoritism spot from her, but for now, Gamine is the favorite for this race. She's undefeated, going 1 turn, 2 Grade 1 wins. Really, really impressive in the Acorn and in the Test. The Acorn was a 1-turn mile. Test was 7 furlongs, same distance as this race at Saratoga. Both of those races were fabulous. We know how talented Gamine is, that she is not going to be alone in this race. And even though she is super freaky, I really think that the fact that Venetian Harbor and Serengeti Empress are also speed horses, and we know how fast Serengeti Empress can go, and definitely Venetian Harbor is going to press them to keep up. It's going to be very fast. I don't think Gamine is going to stick around. She faded in the Kentucky Oaks, and she didn't really have that much pressure on her. Her 2 races have come where she didn't, or her 2 wins in those Grade 1s have come where she really didn't face much pressure on the front end. And I can't really see a situation where Gamine is going to be able to run through a ridiculously fast fraction. Spoiler alert for this race, I've said it already on the podcast for the last 2 weeks. This is the race to go against the favorites in, because the 2 favorites in here, Serengeti Empress and Gamine, are going to take a ton of money. So the price factor as well as the pace factor are the 2 things that draw me away from Gamine. Number 3 is Come Dancing, who was one of the favorite horses for last year's Breeders' Cup Filly and Mare Sprint, and she disappointed in that race. And she has not really been back up to that Grade 1 form that she showed last year when she won the Ballerina, the Gallant Bloom, and even before that she got the Ruffian and another stake at Aqueduct. It is worth mentioning she is coming out of a win in the Honorable Miss at Saratoga, but that was not against any of the top contenders for this division. She ran up against Serengeti Empress in the Ballerina and got beat. She also got beat by Bellafina in that race, notorious for not running great outside of California. The now since retired Bellafina I will mention in there. But, she's just been, I felt that she's been over the hill. And even though she did win that race, which it was not really super surprising to see her win, given the fact that it was one of those lower level graded stakes races when all the top fillies were at Churchill Downs for the Derby City Distaff. She got that win there. It was a good enough win. She won by a length, 3/4 of a length. But in terms of this race, she just doesn't stack up against the top horses in here. She may be a little bit interesting on the odds board, but I think that there are more viable horses that will be around her odds and maybe even a little bit longer. The number 4 is in the midst of bids, the longest shot on the board, and rightfully so for this filly. She is a 5-time winner this year in 2 races in the money, and she did win the Thoroughbred Club of America last time at Keeneland. So to get a graded stakes win for her, she's coming out of a 3-race win streak. She's been running at some of the lower level circuits that did get an allowance win at Oaklawn Park back in April. And like I mentioned, that Thoroughbred Club of America win. But the Thoroughbred Club of America Stakes this year was not a very talented race at all. There were not really no horse from that race is in here with the exception of her. And none of the really high caliber contenders for that division were even in here or in that. So, she's just kind of the horse that got the win. And because of that, she's here. It's weird to say that about a horse that's coming out of a stake win. But for me, in the midst of biz, it's just a horse that doesn't stack up against the top caliber in this division. Well, moving on to the number 6 horse in this race, Sconson, who is coming out of a win in the 8 Bells, also on that Kentucky Derby, Kentucky Oaks weekend. And she took out that 8 Bells very, very similarly to the way that I think this race is going to set up for her in the Breeders' Cup. The fact that there were 2 really, really fast speed horses in the 8 Bells, Monday Call and 4 Graces, that tired each other out on the front end, and she was able to pick up the pieces out of that. And so for that, she's going to get that setup that she got in that 8 Bells. So I think that she is a real live shot in here. If you're looking for a longer price of a horse, I do think that there is one horse in here that's a little bit smarter of a play than her, that is kind of going to benefit from the very same circumstances that Sconson's going to benefit for. But if you're looking for a price and you want to try to manufacture some value in this race, Sconson is definitely a horse that you should consider, because I do think that she is a super live long shot. Moving on to the next horse, Venetian Harbor. I talked about her when I mentioned Gamine a few minutes ago, and Venetian Harbor is kind of in the same boat as Gamine and Serengeti Empress, who we will get to following Venetian Harbor. She's a speed horse, and it doesn't really look like this race is going to set up for her really well at all. She's been beaten by Gamine in the test. I already mentioned that. In addition to her defeat against Speech in the Ashland, and prior to that, she got beat in the Fantasy. So really, Venetian Harbor has been a filly that has been getting beat, also like Speech, by the better horses in the division. The best sprint filly beat her, the best distance filly beat her, and, she did win the Raven Run last out, but that was against not a weak group. It was a really deep group of fillies, and she was better than a lot of them, but this is a race where it seems like it's too much to ask for Venetian Harbor. She also is going to have to contend with that really fast speed duel on the front end that's going to develop between Gamine and Serengeti Empress. And we know that Venetian Harbor is going to be up there, maybe not mixing it up with them completely, but she will be within half a length of them, which for me, that kind of speed that Venetian Harbor is going to have to deal with does not really make me very confident in her, given the fact that I don't think that she has the talent to beat the top 2 or 3 in this race. So Venetian Harbor for me was also a pretty easy pass. Serengeti Empress is the next horse in this race, and I will say I don't think that the speed is going to hold in this race, but if there is one horse that, if you're a person that wants to hedge your bet on a speed horse holding, Serengeti Empress is absolutely the horse you can use to do that with in this race. We saw her run spectacular last time in the Derby City Distaff, even though she did get beat by a short nose by Bell's the One. Serengeti Empress ran too good to lose there. She did gallop out in front for what it's worth. She has been super good when she sprinted. That's only the second time that she's lost going the sprint distance, and the other time was when she lost to the Breeders' Cup filly and mare sprint winner of last year, Kofefi, in the test. Very narrow thing to get beat in that race. Like I mentioned, a lot to like about the ballerina. She also is a stakes winner going a mile on the 16th this year in the Azeri, but that's not really important with looking at her for this weekend. The big thing, like I've already said with Gamine and like I've already said with Venetian Harbor, Serengeti Empress, I don't think that she's going to be able to survive that speed because I just think they're going to go too fast. Coupled with the fact that she's going to have to run with Gamine and Venetian Harbor, I don't think it bodes very well for Serengeti Empress, but she did stick around, so I don't think the Serengeti Empress is going to wilt. She will probably be there fighting whichever one of these closers is coming in this race. The number 8 horse is Scalas Curling, who is a very live horse on the odds board, and she is going to be one of 3 horses that is probably going to be in the same position as Sconson is, in the position to come from really far off and really benefit from what I think is going to turn into a pace meltdown. The thing with me with Scalas Curling is that she is way too far back in a lot of her races. I thought that she had a chance to run well in the Derby City Distaff, but she was just too far out of it. She did run third, but had she been a little bit closer, I think she could have done a lot better in there. She was also 5th in the Madison earlier this year at Keeneland. She did win a stake at Gulfstream, the Hurricane Birdie, and if you go back to November of last year, Churchill did a grade 3 winner there. But like I mentioned, I made the point with Scalas Curling. I don't think that she's going to be close enough that she's going to be able to pick it off. Maybe she can get a 3rd or a 4th, but given the fact that Scalas Curling is always too far back, I think that there is one better horse to use if you're looking for one of those come from behind horses, and that's the next horse that we're going to get to, Bell's the One, who was the winner of that Derby City Distaff last time, and is the wise guy horse. Again, a lot of people really like Bell's the One. I've been on her ever since she won the winning colors. I thought that going into that race, she was a massive overlay. She got the job done there. She also ran 3rd in the Madison at Keeneland behind Guarana and Mia Mischief, who neither of those two are here, which would be concerning if she didn't come back and win the Derby City Distaff, which she did, and she did that super impressively. The same adjectives that I threw the way of Serengeti Empress, you also have to throw the way to Bell's the One. She was really good in that race to be able to come up and get Serengeti Empress. This is the horse that you're going to want to use in here. If this race goes as fast as I think it's going to go, she is going to have the absolute perfect setup, and I think it's going to be a replica of the Derby City Distaff. We also know that she likes to run at Keeneland. She did win the Raven Run last year, which is one of the big reasons coming out of that 8 bells. I thought she was going to be a real threat come Breeders' Cup time. She absolutely is, and I would definitely advise you, if you're looking to get this race right, maybe more so than just finding value, then Bell's the One is the horse that you got to use, because even if she is around the 4 to 6 to 1 range, I think she is going to be a little bit lower than that 6 to 1. You will get some decent value with her because of the amount of money that Serengeti Empress and Gamine are going to take. With that being said, I'll get into my picks for this race, and even though I said all that I said about Bell's the One, I'm not going to pick her simply because I want to look for a little bit more value in here. I did give Sconson a lot of praise, and I'm going to take Sconson in here. I think that Sconson is going to have a very similar setup to what she had in her 8 bells, and I'm hoping that she is going to run that race back, and I think if she does, then she is going to be in a really good position to win the race. She is going to have to contend with Bell's the One and maybe possibly Scalas Curling, but I'm going to put Sconson on top. Serengeti Empress will be second in this race, and I'm going to use Scalas Curling again for 3rd, because I do think Scalas Curling will get going at some point. It's just a question of how long it take her to get going, and I think it's going to be a little bit longer than it would take her to win the race, but I think she can still place well. So those are my top 3 in this race, and if I were to throw in a 4th, it would be Bell's the One. But if you're picking this race purely based on trying to get it right and not looking at value, definitely go with Bell's the One. So that's it for this video. I will see you for more Breeders' Cup previews on my end. We will have, like I have mentioned all week, previews for all 14 of these Breeders' Cup races, as well as Breeders' Cup Power Hour with Jay Prittman. So check all that out. We will see you. If you bet this race, good luck, and we will see you next time.